Okay, I think we're good to go now. All right. All right, this is Willie Jones, and you've tuned in to another edition of the Working Woman Report. Thank you so much for tuning in with us today. We have another great discussion. I want to remind you that the Working Woman Report is programming by Women for Progress Radio to spotlight the work of women throughout the state of Mississippi. And today we are talking on the subject of how do we best empower women-owned business. We're going to talk a little bit about the status of women-owned businesses in the state of Mississippi and their impact. And we're going to talk a little bit about connecting women-owned businesses and women entrepreneurs to resources and opportunity, which is a very, very important conversation. Not our first conversation around COVID on this discussion, but it's going to be ongoing because we know that even during the last few months, we've had many challenges. Businesses, specifically women-owned businesses and small businesses, have been very challenging connecting to the resources that has supposedly been out there to help us, support us, empower us, and make sure that we continue to maintain capacity so we can empower our communities by hiring individuals from our community and to be able to stay live during this COVID until we're able to put our foot on the pedal and be able to move forward and really thrive and get back to thriving again. But and I have an exciting guest with us. I am a so big fan of hers. She's incredible. This is not her first time on Women for Progress Radio in this programming, and we always look forward to our conversation. But I do want to just mention a couple things. Of course, I want to remind our audience that there's an election coming up, a special election coming up here in District 66 for Mississippi House of Representatives for District 66. If you live in that particular district, we want you to show up at the polls on September 22nd. It is so very, very important that you vote in every election, and especially in our special elections. We usually have a low turnout on these particular special elections, but we need you to show up in 2020. Every time that they ring the bell for an election period, we want you to be at the gate ready to vote and cast your voice. So September 22nd, remind you again, November 3rd, you still have time to register and be able to vote in the November election. You still have time to register and vote. And there's a full guide of various links where you can provide all the information about absentee balloting, how to register to vote, is on your Secretary of State website at sos.ms.gov, sos.ms.gov. You can go to womenforprogress.net. We have a tab there that says voting guide, and you can go there and there's information there. And one of the most incredible websites that we definitely want you to engage in is vote411.org, vote411.org. And you're going to be able to download copies of the ballots for November. And I think even the balance for September 22nd. But go there. I'm not sure for that, but go to the vote411.org. You can find out information about your candidates. If you don't know where your polling location is, Vote 411 can help you with that. Just all you want to check to make sure that if you haven't voted in the few elections and you're not sure if you're still a registered voter and your registration is valid, you can go to vote411.org and get that done also. So there's so many places you can get. And when all of that fails, call Women for Progress. You can email us at mail, MAIL, at womenforprogress.net, or give us a call at 601-259-6770. And if we don't have the answers, believe me, we will get you the answers. We will respond to your requests and your questions promptly, and whatever assistance that you need us with, please call us. Whatever the situation is, if you got an issue around community, around family, whatever the engagement is, please give us a call and we'll be glad to help you get connected. We even know some jobs that are open. If you got some young people that is looking for an internship program, we here at Dependable Source, DSC, are looking for folks. We have several positions open available, administrative positions. If you're interested in becoming an instructor, We have some other positions there, so we're looking for good people. So go to, give us a call at 601-351-5858 or call Women for Progress at 601-259-6770. So now, all of that information, please share that information also with your friends and associates. So we can make sure that we have an incredible turnout, because everything that we're even talking about today, about the monies and resources for women-owned businesses, empowering small businesses, all of that comes down to making sure that we show up at the polls and vote. And then finally, I want to say to you, if you have not completed your census, we need you to do that now. While you're listening to, at the sound of my voice, as we say in the Baptist church, I want you to pull out your phones. And if you have not completed it, tops 10 minutes it would take you to fill it out. And it's not a long process. As a matter of fact, I went through it so quick and I was so excited when I completed my survey. So make sure you go to 2020census.gov, 2020census.gov, and complete your census. And then ask 10 of your friends and family if they've done theirs. We need big participation. We're not where we need to be yet, and we still only have a very short time to get it done. So it's such a sense of urgency for you to make sure that you get that done. Now, let's go back to the Working Woman Report, and let's get our conversation started. I first want to introduce Miss Calandra Davis, who is one of the most incredible human beings on the planet. She is so exciting. The work that she's to do is powerful. Calandra, I want to first start out by giving you a pat on the back for all you do, for your perspective. I love how when I look at your work and what you have done and what you are doing, I love the idea that a lot of your footsteps are data-driven. And then what I like about you too is that you're down in our communities. You are a mother yourself, so you understand the issues around how we need to empower communities and uplift communities, and build wealth and fill out the gaps that we're missing when it comes to financial. So I'm so excited about what you do, and I so appreciate the work that you do. So I wanted to get that out of the way first and give you those pat on the backs for that. But I want to share a little bit of just a very short blurb of your resume so folks know who we are talking to today. And they can go to the Hope Policy Institute website at hopepolicy.org to get a complete list, a view of your resume and the work that you've done and the work of the Hope Policy Institute. But I want to share a little bit this morning. Calandra Davis, who is a policy analyst at Hope Policy Institute. Prior to joining the policy team, Calandra served as Hope's Financial Inclusion Officer for the Central Mississippi market, where she provided financial inclusion services to the unbanked and underbanked and built partnerships to address economic mobility, the racial gap, and affordable housing. Calandra has a Master's of Public Service degree from the University of Arkansas Clinton School of Public Service, where she played a leading role in the research and policy development for the racial disparities in the Arkansas Criminal Justice System Research Project. She obtained a dual degree in biology and chemistry from Alcorn State University in Lorman, Mississippi. Calandra also works on the ground with various community organizations where her work intersects at grassroots organizing, advocacy, and policy change. And I stated I love the work because even here at DSC, Hope has been integral with sharing information with us, helping us empower up some of the workforce development work that we've been doing here. So we appreciate what you all do and the diversity of the work. And I want to say too, my last kudos to your organization is when I'm sitting in rooms at various board meetings or organizing meetings or in meetings with other community service organizations, when the name Hope comes up, it is overwhelmingly excitement. I think the words I'm hearing is innovation. I'm hearing real support. They're the real deal, that you are doing exciting things. And that's impressive. That's extremely impressive that you don't hear that type of rah-rah for an organization. and especially one that's as diverse as Hope, which are trying to do a lot of different things. So first, before we get into our discussion, I want to talk a little bit about Hope too, but I also want to talk, because we own the Working Woman Report, we like to hear about the women that are engaging in the work. And as your resume stated, Calandra, you have a diverse education and diverse experience, but it also appears to me that you have been intentional in this process about where you want your life and your footsteps to be. So tell us how you got involved in this work, and how did you even come to Hope?
Yes, sure. So to make a long story short, I'm a Mississippi girl, born and raised, grew up in very country parts of Mississippi. So poverty has always been around me, even if I didn't know at a young age what it was. Went to college, Alcorn is in the middle of Lorman, Port Gibson. So again, I'm seeing very just stark poverty, and I'm wondering why, especially as the U.S. is one of the most developed countries. And it was then that I began to realize like the systemic parts of the poverty and what that meant. Later went to Little Rock and began to do that work in the Delta areas of Arkansas and Mississippi. And just, again, fully understanding that sometimes it's not just a decision or individual decision that we make that pushes us into poverty. And then having my own stories, my own lived experiences, becoming a mom right out the grad school. So very low income, but still having to, have insurance in order to take my daughter to her appointments. Those lived experiences, and then having that theoretical knowledge is really what began to push me even more so to understand that to want to do economic justice work full time and to really dedicate my life to it. And I heard of Hope when I was in Little Rock, actually, thanks to some classmates who were talking. Hope was just starting in Little Rock, Arkansas. And, Mississippi is home, moved back home, and I saw opportunity with Hope that I felt aligned with my values, my own personal values. I applied, and here we are today.
That's interesting. And I want to touch on one statement that you made. Is you said that being in poverty or having a life in poverty is not determined by one bad decision that you make. Talk a little bit more, expand that. What do you mean by that?
Yes, sure. So, as someone also, again, as my biography said, before joining a policy team, I did financial inclusion work, which meant I was able to do some financial literacy throughout the communities. And oftentimes people reduce that to only talking about a budget. And don't get me wrong, budgets are really important. Mm-hmm. But when you are living in poverty or paycheck to paycheck, you can do your very best. You can save money, and then an emergency happens and it sets you all the way back. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're talking about when we say one bad decision isn't what's keeping you in this cycle of poverty. Mm-hmm. There's so many other barriers there that mm-hmm. we might not see or we might not understand, especially if you aren't in this field of work. But there's so many policies in place, so many laws in place that keeps us stuck in this cycle of poverty. And again, which is why I love the work that we're doing at Hope Policy Institute, because we're trying to break down those barriers, but we're also trying to understand the real stories of people who's living through this so that we can advocate for them in the way that they need to be advocated for.
Right. And we know individuals and even those who may not be considered based on the numbers in poverty, there's many outside environmental obstacles that come our way that we'd have no control over. But policy is so huge, and that's why I'm passionate when people say that I don't want to be political. I don't want to talk about politics, or that's not my thing. And what I'm saying and sharing with people now, when I hear that, I welcome that particular statement, because that's my opportunity to say to them, to help connect the dots to policy and help them understand that policy drives everything we do. And now even down to the water we drink, And even I was saying to a fellow activist the other day, even when we as women get up every morning and we decide what we're going to put on, that's related to policy, And so it's important for us to be at the table when that policy process is made. And a lot of times in our particular communities of color, we only deal with the policy end or confront it with the policy side when it's already the rules and regulations have been put in place, all the eligibility has been done, and then we come to the table and the plate is already set. We don't have a choice for what's on the plate or how we even eat what's on the plate. And so that's why I'm excited about the work that you all are doing. But I want to talk a little bit more about Hope Policy Institute and the whole Hope conglomerate. I think a lot of people know Hope Credit Union. Now we're talking Hope Policy Institute. I think there's a Hope Enterprises. So how in this piece around policy, it's very interesting that now Hope has kind of connected that issue to the financial literacy piece that they're doing and the financial engagement piece. So what is the vision for Hope? I mean, how do they plan to use this particular network of resources to impact families and communities in Mississippi? How is all of that coming together to be able to accomplish whatever goals that they have?
Right. So again, you mentioned that Hope, there's 3 entities: our enterprise corporation, the credit union, which I'm sure most people are familiar with, and then the Policy Institute. So we're located in the Deep South in 5 different states: Alabama, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Tennessee. And we're based here in Mississippi, right in Jackson, off of Fortification Street. And a lot of our work really impacts some of the hardest hit, most marginalized communities. We're looking to help folks who are underbanked and unbanked, helping people who would normally go to traditional banks and probably get turned around. At Hope, we often like to say, especially on the credit union side, that we don't tell people no, we tell them not right now. For us, that's important because we want, really using our name, we really want to give people hope for their financial situations. And I think where policy comes in at is where we want to make that impact beyond just one individual. It's great if, we can get one individual into an auto loan, we can get one individual into a home. But if we can do that for across the Deep South, especially, again, knowing that we have some of the largest disparities, and if we can do that by impacting laws, impacting regulations that are being federal regulations that are being placed right now, I think that's important because then we're able to provide those services to even more people across the state.
And we're going to talk about this a little more about connecting to Hope a little later on. But I want to just interject right here because I know this is lunchtime hour. People are jetting in and jetting out. I want to say to people, the other thing, I'm a believer in good information. And so as we talk about these opportunities that Hope is providing, I want folks that are listening who are leadership in organizations. If you're part of your women's ministry at your church, if you leading a PTA, I want you to reach out to Hope Credit Union and Hope Enterprise and Hope Policy Institute. And we're going to give you some information on how to do that too. And also engage this information. So let's say if you have a women ministry at your church, set up an opportunity where Hope can come in and talk to them about the opportunities through Hope Credit Union. And why go to Hope versus a Regions or Bank Plus or some of the other? And these are good folks. Regions and Bank Plus, all those folks are good folks. But Hope has got some opportunities there and some tools that does specifically touch certain communities, and especially in these pandemic and in times that we're in right now. So I want you to do that, as we share this information and contact information, please put that on your task list to engage whatever organization, even if you have a business. One of the things that Hope has done is come into DSC Training Academy and talk to our driver trainees for our truck driver training program, and talk to them about financial literacy and the road to home ownership. So when we talk about the Hope, there's a journey to this. I mean, you just don't wake up and say, well, hey, I'm going to show up at Hope and they're going to help me get a house, and in a week I'm going to be able to do it. But there's a process. Some of us are further along that road than others, but Hope does a wonderful job at walking through that process and helping us with that. Also, I think what I want to say too here, this brief moment, is what I think Hope does too and do well is eliminate fear. And I think that's what exists a lot of in communities of color and in communities that are living in poverty. Fear of finance, fear of even talking about money, because sometimes you're in a situation where your money is so tied up, you don't even know how to get it loose. You don't even know what the first next steps are. You feel like you're so deep that there's no way you can see the light of day. You sometimes are so deep that you feel like you cannot change the quality of life for yourself and your family. And I say, Hope has hope for you. So I want you to reach out to them and make sure that you connect with their resources. And don't just go by I'm a fan of Hope, you can tell. But I promise you, if you reach out, there will be at least one opportunity there at Hope that you can share with your community and even your family members. So I want you to be able to do that. Now, I want to move forward. What are some of the methods that Hope Policy Institute is using to help impact these communities?
Yeah, so right now, we are really our policy team is really diving into CARES Act funding and how states and our regions are using these funds to help the communities, and especially around, small business relief programs, which kind of brings us back to the topic of this conversation around just what are small businesses, especially people of color small businesses, women-owned small businesses, what are they receiving, and individuals as well. And so as Hope is digging into that data, as we are looking and we're partnering, a part of coalitions to get the word out to different networks. I know you reached out to some of the small businesses in your network. What we're doing is making sure that the businesses and the people have the information they need to receive, all of the resources that are out there. And then when there's a barrier there, again, something that these businesses probably did not know about or that they cannot help is no fault of their own. That's where Hope Policy Team comes in, and we do the advocacy part. That's where we come in and we advocate, and we're hopping on calls to make sure, or rather writing blog posts or, submitting comments, letting folks know that, hey, the rules that you're making, the decisions that you're making, they're impacting people in our region. And we know this because we're talking to these people. We have relationships with these people. We're hearing from them. I've heard from you about your own challenges. Mm-hmm. And so we're using those stories to propel the work that we're doing.
And when we last talked a couple of months ago and we were sharing information, I think they had only given out to businesses 1%, I think, of the money that was there. How are we looking now on that distribution of those funds around small businesses?
Yeah, I can provide a little update since we've last talked. So in May, for those who don't know or who might not be aware, the Mississippi legislature approved for $300 million of the CARES Act money to fund small business relief. And there was 2 different programs, to go towards small business relief. Actually, my colleague Kia was on a while back, and he talked about just the ins and outs of that program. But what we've learned since then, since that last report, and since you and I talked, is that those quick $2,000 grants that businesses were able to apply for, there was no application necessary. Only $14,000 grants have been approved. That's only equaling to $28.2 million. And that's out of $60 million. So not enough. Something else that we know with those quick grants is that 25% of the applicants had not filed their 2018 or 2019 state income tax returns. So again, this is where the financial literacy comes into place. Mm-hmm. Like if we had helped those businesses, or if those businesses knew, the qualifications, if they already had their documentation in order, then, they probably would have received the money. But we also know still with so many of the people who have applied that not enough money has been given out. And then we go to our Back to Business program, where the application deadline was actually yesterday. $240 million allocated for small business relief. And I have some numbers here that I'll pull. It said nearly 60% of the businesses that applied were minority and women-owned. So I don't have the intersection of Black women-owned businesses that applied, but we do know that 60% of the businesses that applied for that program was minority and women-owned. And then, as of only a couple of weeks ago, only 3,300, a little over 3,300 of minority and women-owned grants have been approved. Mm-hmm. That's only $9.5 million. Mm-hmm. So, which is really short of the $40 million that was allocated strictly for minority and women-owned businesses. And, we all know, especially listeners, how important minority and women-owned businesses are to our communities, the services that they provide. We also know on a wide scale that COVID-19 is impacting particularly Black and Brown communities at far worse levels than anyone else. And that our businesses are not exempt from that. Our businesses are also hardest hit. Our businesses are closing. And so it's not because there isn't a demand for the money that we're not receiving it, mm-hmm. but there's something there, and we know we need more. We need for those who are, administering the money to really understand and really start to talk to the people, talk to organizations like Women for Progress, mm-hmm. who are working with these businesses to understand the needs there and to fill in those gaps.
And I want to make a few other points around the impact of women-owned businesses. So when we talk about these numbers, and we know that women specifically are being impacted mostly by COVID, and so then we move to women-owned businesses, and that we need to understand what that does to our community as a whole too. Not only the families of these women-owned businesses, but that particular type of impact to our communities in our Mississippi economy. So it's just not just a person of color thing. This is a Mississippi economy thing. And then when we think about where we are in the pandemic and in the state of COVID, we don't need the money tomorrow. We need it now. So when you think of the time between May and where we are now, we're getting ready to enter October, a lot of water is falling during that period of time. We right now as business owners, it doesn't matter if you're a small business or even the larger businesses, these have been extremely challenging times for us. And times when we're making decisions either to shut our doors and lay off people who need those jobs, or either to try to keep them open. And every day is a decision to be made. That's the first thing we think about is what are we going to need, and how do we make sure that we maintain these doors open? And I think for many businesses that I'm talking to, it's about, I don't have enough information right now, or I don't know what's going to happen right now in order for me to make a decision 30 days from now, 60 days from now. And in the meantime, expenses are rolling and all of these things are rolling. And I think the most crucial thing for us as business owners and as employers is the care of our employees. I think that's the most painful and the most challenging thing for us when we're making decisions to come in every morning and turn the lights on. A lot of times we come in because we want to do whatever we need to do to make sure that families are maintained and they're continue with the income. Because we know many businesses are closing, have already closed. Hundreds of businesses are closing. We're still talking to businesses that are being closed. So when we talk about this money, what I'm experiencing when I'm calling folks, and I want to share that because I want you all that are listening, if there are women-owned businesses that are listening, small businesses that are listening, I want you to hear some of these conversations because I want you to pick up the phone, call us. I want you to email Women for Progress, mail@womenforprogress.net, mail@womenforprogress.net. We want you to share your stories with us. We're going to share email and contact information for HOPE. We want you to share that information with the HOPE Policy Institute. If we're going to make some traction, we need you all to kick up some dust. Okay? So one of the things that I've experienced when I've called to check on our application is that there has been it's almost like a recording. The individuals that you talk to, they say, you got to have this, you got to have this. If there's any other questions, I don't want to hear. I'm not saying that they don't want to hear it, but this is what, there is no explanation. There is no, I mean, these particular rules and regulations and eligibility requirements that have been put in, no matter how foolish they sound, and no matter how ridiculous your situation may be, very, very different. Because one of the things, I talked to a recent business owner and they told me that they started their business in 2019, but they didn't start revenue accrual or payroll until January of this year. So they didn't have any reporting to do in 2019. There was no filing, but the rules say for this particular money, you have to have had to been in business January of 2020. Am I right on the CARES Act money? So
you're right.
That particular business met the eligibility requirement. They were in business January. They had revenue and payroll the first quarter. COVID hit, and then they're now in this situation. And their doors are still open, by the way, and they're still paying their employees. But the holdup has been they're looking for a filing for 2019 for this particular business when they had zero revenue, zero activity in the business. They just happened to have filed their incorporation in 2019. Now, that to me requires okay, let's move you to the next department in this particular area. Let's see what we need to get from you. They've all met all the requirements except for this particular filing. By the way, let me tell you the other thing. Their fiscal year only started October of 2019. Their first corporate filing is not due until September of this year. So they they're not even required to make a filing last year because their business just started October. So it's these kind of if, ands, and buts and pigeonholes that are keeping people from being empowered, especially communities of color, especially small businesses. But so we have to look at this thing about who's setting these guidelines, who's setting these standards. Are we setting Mississippi businesses up for failure? Do we want these communities and these businesses to thrive? Or we're setting up for this money, and then if we don't use this money, it's not being dispersed, what happens to that money? That's the other question. So those of you who have your stories, we want you to call. If you receive some funding from this program, we want to hear from you too. We want to know how successful you were. How did that money impact you? Did you file for just a $2,000 versus if you would have done? Now, what a lot of businesses are doing, we talk about the financial literacy piece. They're just going for it was $1,500, now it's $2,000. They could have, if they had everything in order the way it should have been in order, they could have listed their expenses and got a lot more, been eligible for a lot more money. So we small businesses are also losing out on that particular end because of where we are. So there's a lot of help we need there, but we need a lot of feedback from our communities around that. So you are talking to a lot of different businesses, Calandra. Are you hearing from folks who actually have received funding? Or they're having challenges based on a lot of the challenges I'm telling you about? What are the voices being heard in the community around small businesses?
Well, really, everything that you just said are the same problems that we are hearing. We actually have a report that I can share with you again around just a lot of the lack of information that was out there about the program. Information that businesses did not have early on. And that was one of our efforts, was really partnering with like Women for Progress or the NAACP to get the word out to as many businesses as we could. But even still, there's just difficulty in reaching everyone. Mm-hmm. Some other stories that we're hearing is exactly about the process and how long it has been. So if you applied in May and it's 2 months later and still you haven't heard anything back, or you call and you kind of just get the runaround. I personally don't have any of the success stories from the program. Mm-hmm. Again, which is why it's so important that people do send their stories or share their stories with us. We would love to collect and really just start to analyze what does it mean. So who was successful, who received the money, who did not receive the money, and what are the common themes and all of that.
I did hear from a couple of salon owners who said to me, look, we were so desperate that we just applied for the one-time hit, the $2,000, and we were just happy to get that because we were in such need. We were trying to survive. But I know these particular salon owners, they did a wonderful job based on what I know from conversations with them, that they could have, if they had the information or was not in such a desperate state, they could have filed and received a lot more money, because many of them had other employees that were working for them and other expenses that they could have itemized and received more. So when I talk about that sense of urgency, I mean, it's taking months before people even get an answer. Even if when you applied online and you go back and look and you say, okay, it's in review. And so, if you're in need of matter of fact, I'll even share with our application, it was taking so long that I forgot that we even applied. And I think, I don't know, I was in a conversation with somebody one day. I said, oh my God, let me go back and check and see what's going on with this thing. So it's taken a long period of time, and I'm concerned about this process because we know that we have all these businesses. The other thing that we're being told is, oh, we have so many applications and it takes us a while to go through this process. But if you have established some rules and regulations in place, this process should be able to go, either the person has the information or they don't have the information. You need to be moving through this process a whole lot quicker. So now, before we go on any further in this conversation, Calandra, share the email and cell phone number of the people that you want folks to send their information to. If they're having challenges around this application process, they want to share the success stories, where do they need to send that to?
Yeah, so you all can send this information directly to me. My email address is calandra.davis@hope-ec.org.
Okay.
And so I will also be sure to share that in the comment section of the live video as well.
Great.
And then I will give you my, I'm trying to see which phone number I should give. I'm going to give you all Hope's phone number. Okay. And then when you call, you can ask for me and I will take your stories that way as well.
Okay.
And so the phone number will be 601-944-1100.
And give us the email again you want us to use.
So this is my personal work email, calandra.davis@hope-ec.org.
Hope-ec.org? Okay, great. And we'll continue to share that information also. So right now, make sure you write down that email address. And look, you don't have to tell a whole life story about your process. We just want you to call, share any challenges that you have. The great thing about it is, if you're still going through challenges through the application process, you now have somebody you can reach out to you that can help. And so we want you to be able to do that. If you have some success stories, we want you to call too. And then if you want to you need some help. You say, well, look, I applied for just this 2,000 because I really didn't have my ducks in the row, and there were some other things on the accounting side that I knew I didn't have in place. Hope can help you with that also. So let's get upright, because they're telling us that this won't be the last pandemic that we're going to deal with. They're telling us that the pandemic that we're in right now is still long over with. So we need some help. Don't even think temporary, that you think, well, hey, I just want to keep my boat upright just for a few months, and then if I can survive the next few months, then I know I can do it on my own. No. These things are going to have long-term ramifications for all of us on a personal and business level. Even when you get upright, there's still going to be challenges for you. So you make sure you're connecting with the right place right now. And it's businesses that are fresh and new, and also those seasoned business like us who've been around for a long time. DSC have been in the transportation business for over 28 years. But I tell you right now, I'm always seeking resources and opportunity to help wherever I can. One thing, people ask me, what have I learned in the years that I've owned my own business? One thing that I've learned is always ask for help. Always ask for help. You can't get enough of it. You got to get good help now. You got to get good help and good information. You don't want to be talking to every Tom, Dick, and Harry just because they say that they know what you need to do. You need to be able to realize what's good information that's going to benefit you, and then just information that's just rhetoric and trends that are out there. So I want to make a little shift now and also talk about before COVID hit, Calandra. One thing, we heard a lot of great news about the number of small businesses that were in the state of Mississippi, and even on a national level. How were we doing before COVID, and then how are we doing now? And what do you think the impact of COVID is going to be to where we stand around small businesses in the state of Mississippi?
Yes, I'm glad you asked. So, again, especially with talking about women, even before COVID, and with talking about, communities of color, we knew that women, particularly Black and brown women, already had more debt than men. They already had a greater prevalence of liquid asset poverty, meaning, they did not have liquid assets on hand, that, money in their savings or checking account. And we were already experiencing a gender pay gap. We were getting paid or receiving lower wages. COVID-19's impact has only magnified all of those things. It's only magnified the gap. And so we look at, on a national scale, 59% of all Black businesses, or 59% of all Black businesses, about 1.52 million businesses were women-owned. And that seems, like really great numbers, and I believe it is. But then we have to look at the average revenue of those businesses. 97% are sole proprietors, but the average revenue was just under $14,000.
Wow.
And yeah, so I often talk about the racial wealth gap. I often talk about the wealth of just Black households, but then we look at it and we see it's reflecting in our businesses as well. And then to bring it, make it even more specific to Mississippi, 89,000 of the firms or businesses in Mississippi are women owned, in comparison to 125,000 being owned by men. And so that's 38%. And then those numbers include, all women-owned businesses, not just Black women-owned businesses. But still, again, there's a gap there. And we see that there's a gap. And what we also know is that COVID is impacting these businesses across the board. But because women-owned businesses are often smaller, have less resources, then they are hit hardest. And so while we don't have the numbers yet of what that looks like, we don't know how many businesses have closed yet in Mississippi. we do know that women-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses will likely be hit the hardest, and also have the most difficulty with assessing the relief programs and resources that are out there. And so those are just some of the, numbers. And also, again, we've talked about this already. You talked about some of your friends who own salons. We know that women-owned businesses such as like personal care or retail, salons, restaurants, they were some of the most impacted by the lockdown orders. And they're also some of those that are most vital to our communities, our local economy, which is why, again, it's so important that we make sure that these businesses are getting the relief that they need and getting the resources that they need. And before we wrap up the call, I want to just give some folks some key takeaways to make sure that they understand exactly where we are in this period of time and how we can move forward.
Okay.
Yeah, well, actually, also, my daughter is here. For those who know me, again, I'm a working mom. Yeah. So,
that's right. Hi, Zora.
So I'll start with the key takeaways. In order for the women business leaders to really emerge from this crisis, give me 1 minute, babe. Relief programs really have to address the existing racial gaps, the gender gaps, economic disparities, to ensure that we receive all of the resources and relief we need. And we need officials to engage with community groups and leaders. We need officials to talk to those groups like Women for Progress who already understand, who are already doing the work to help ensure that effective deployment of CARES Act dollars are being distributed. We also want to understand, too, that although the deadline for the Mississippi Back to Business program, the application deadline was yesterday, there's other resources out there. Again, call HOPE. Ask us what programs we have available. If we aren't able to help, we're going to connect you to our partners that are across the state, across the region, who are able to help. There are other grants available, and we can help provide some of those resources to you, Ms. Jones, so that you can share them, again, with your network.
Yeah, great. And please, all the points that you just made, I'll look forward to you sending that to me after the call with any links to any additional grant sources too that we want to share. We want to immediately share that after this conversation so that while people have it fresh on their minds that are listening to this call, that they'll be able to share it and to be engaged. And stay tuned, because Women for Progress has connected with HOPE, and we're going to continue to work with them on this policy around policies that impact women in communities of color. And the other thing, we just got a couple more minutes, but one of the things your focus had been for a very long time is addressing poverty. And we don't like to talk about poverty. And I have to say, when most of us think about poverty, we think about poverty in other areas. We don't think about poverty inside the United States. We don't even think about poverty in our states. But I tell you what, this COVID pandemic has unearthed is that poverty exists in our families. It exists on our street. It exists in even organizations that are trying to empower communities. So poverty is right next door to us. Poverty is on the church pew, next to the church pew that we sit on Sundays. So we got to talk about it. We got to say that word so we can unearth it and try to deal with the issues around it. And if we think about how the poverty is defined and the numbers that it takes to define you, that you are living in poverty, it is pretty overwhelming and scary. Because we find people who you don't think that that look at walking around every day that doesn't look like they're in poverty, but when it comes to finances and where they are from an asset standpoint, from a wealth standpoint, they are living in poverty, especially around this COVID. Do you agree?
Yes, I completely agree. And also, I just want to say that poverty doesn't have a look, you know? Mm-hmm. Sometimes we say that a person dresses a certain way, and poverty, it's across every demographic. Me, myself, 2 master's degrees, was living it paycheck to paycheck at one point in time. And there's so many, which will be a whole nother Working Woman's Report if we talked about it. But, you know, a lot of times the poverty is targeted, where you have predatory lenders that are in certain areas, and we get caught in those debt cycles that pushes us further in these into systemic poverty without even knowing why or how. And so, I completely agree with everything you're saying. And that's why it's important that when we're advocating for everyone, we understand that our freedom, that economic justice for us is tied to the next person, that this is really, and if COVID-19 has taught me anything, it's the importance of community, the importance of, mutual aid, the importance of the connections that we've had, that some of us are missing right now. Again, it's really important that we understand that all of what we're doing right now, all of what we're experiencing is tied to the next person's experience.
Exactly. I'm so glad you put it that way. And then I want to remind our audience that we got an election coming up September 22nd, November 3rd. There's still time to register to vote. Go to sos.ms.gov elections, and you can find out all the information you need there on how to get registered, ballots, absentee. We want everybody who can and qualifies for absentee ballot. We want you right now, because beginning September 21 through October 31, you're going to be able to vote absentee ballot during that entire period. And we want everybody who can, even if you have health issues, you're going to be out of town. We want you to maximize the opportunity, because we don't want you to wait down to November 3rd and say, oh, I can't show up at the poll, or, oh, I'm feeling a little sick, or I have a flu, because you already have had your voice heard. So make sure you do that. Reach out to vote411.org, vote411.org. There is also a voting plan. This year, we need to make a plan for voting. How are you going to vote? Are you going to vote absentee? Are you going to vote in person? What is your polling location? All those things you need to make a plan on. Then that plan should include, how do you engage other voters, registered voters, to make sure that they vote? And you have access right now to at least 20 people in your contact list that you need to call. So don't think everybody is part of the choir. You think, oh, I know she votes because she does this, or I know this person votes. It would be, sometimes your best friend has not voted in the last couple of elections, but no shame on it. Don't beat them up about it. You just make sure that make sure that they register in the for the next election, and also show up to vote. Not just register. We need you to show up to vote, because we got a lot of registered voters that we need to get to the poll. So let's make this a fun effort in 2020. Let's every week make sure we contact somebody. Say every week all the way through the election. And that won't be long, because we're only a few weeks away from November election. Let's say every week on Monday, we're going to put 2 people or 3 people or 5 people, or if you really got gusto, 10 or 20 people that you're going to call or either text and say, have you created your voting plan for November? How do you plan to vote for November? Will you be voting absentee? Have you checked out the absentee rules? You want to be able to do that now. Share those dates, September 21 through October 31st, that they can absentee vote. Share how they can vote. But if you go to our website at womenforprogress.net and hit that voting plan tab, there is a step process. You don't even have to think about it. It's a 1, 2, 3, 4. It has all the links there, and it has all the information you need to create that voting plan. So we want to share with that. My final question to you, Calandra, is, I love the idea. You got little Zora there, and by the name, I just love her. One of my favorite authors. I think you named her after Zora Neale Hurston. But as a mother and a woman of color you have this big career that you're doing amazing things. Of course, now you are a mother, not now mother. Zora's a few years old. How have you managed the challenges around COVID with all of these hats that you have to wear? What have been some of the things maybe one or two things that you have learned, and how are you managing this whole process? You, of course, now homeschooling.
Yeah, so, it's, for me, a lot of people say it's the new normal. It's a normal that I have yet to get used to. I am, I'm learning to navigate it. But I think what propels me, especially, for those who know my passion for a lot of the advocacy and justice work in our communities, is that COVID also shows, while it unmasked so many disparities that we already knew were there, it also shows that there's opportunity for a better world. And I fully believe that a better world is possible. Having Zora here so often and all the time makes me want that better world to happen even more so for her. And that's what encourages this work. That is what makes me want to get out there, so that other moms also have the opportunity, and that they don't have to, face so many of these barriers that are in place because of whether that's COVID-19, whether that is, small business relief programs that they cannot access, or predatory lenders that are targeting them. There's something different. There's alternatives. There's something better. And I think we can achieve it. And so that's my whole mindset right now. Not to say that there aren't, bad days or weary days or very tiresome days. But I've learned how to find a balance, to find rest, and to find hope in all of this.
Well, thank you so much. And I think we can close by saying we love that last statement you said, and find a hope. And we want you to find hope. We want you to reach out to Hope Policy Institute, 601-944-1100, or email Calandra at Calandra, calandra.davis@hope-ec.org, and we're going to be sharing our follow-up information and tips and things like that after the program also. And I want to close by saying, Calandra, at Women for Progress, we say that you are Nefertiti's, and that we see and feel your crown shining. You are definitely a Nefertiti, a queen that is doing the work and making the steps necessary to not only empower yourself, but empower others that look like you, walk like you, and talk like you. And so we're so proud of your work, and we support you in every way. Any way we can help you and support what you do, we're just a phone call away, and we'll always respond to your call. So thank you so much. This has been a wonderful conversation. And look, we have to make this thing a quarterly thing where we can talk about all this information. You always bring a fresh perspective and a call to action for us, and we appreciate you that. And thank you so much for taking the time with the Working Woman Report.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody for listening, tuning in. We're here every Wednesday from 12 to 1 on Women for Progress page and on all of our radio networks. Go to womenforprogressradio.com, womenforprogressradio.com, and connect to all of our podcasts and our programming on the Women for Progress radio network. Tomorrow night, Thursday night at 5:30, we're going to be talking to the incredible Senator John Horhn, and we're going to ask him about these things that we've been talking about today, and let's hear what he has to say and how we can engage him. And if you have questions for the senator, we want you to email them to us at mail@womenforprogress.net. So have a wonderful day, and say bye-bye to Zora for us, and we hope she has a wonderful, wonderful day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.